Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello, 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 and welcome to the Lynn Cullen Show. 2/24, that's the date. Amazing, actually, since spring's almost here. Yes. Okay, got to get my head in here. Trump's won again. He's won in New England. He's won and big. And won big in the South Carolina. Now big in the West, in Nevada. Gotta say, starting to look a little like a juggernaut. Incredible. So they're coming at him now, $1 million buys all over all the states that are going to be in Super Tuesday primary next week. They're going to try. And you know what? It ain't going to work. And with a tip of my hat to our caller, Mike in D.C., Mike, I don't think you're right. I don't think the establishment can pull this out because this is an anti-establishment movement. And it's huge. And it's starting to, you can tell, it's just starting to sort of morph so that in whole swaths of America, they love him. They just love him. They're enjoying the show. I mean, what I can get from talking to people who tell me they're going to vote for Trump, people in my life, they're going to vote for Trump. They love his combativeness. They love the, they're not thinking too far ahead. I would agree. But this is the allure. They love that he's sticking his middle finger in the face of the people who they feel have screwed them. They sometimes can't articulate why. But this is how, I don't know, those terms demagoguery and populism can come together, and you see how things can be upended. By the way, tomorrow, our historian, Jared Day, who doesn't live here anymore, will be on the show via phone. He's just dying to talk about all this stuff. And I'm very eager to hear his take, because with my little knowledge of history, this feels like, as I said, I think yesterday, that we're living in a truly historic moment. Not necessarily good, but we're living in it. So here it is. The unthinkable is happening. And I've never seen anyone come in, lose more elections, and act like the winner than Marco Rubio. I mean, I can't imagine what'll happen if when and if he wins one, because he gives these really good, if you were his fan, you would just go nuts, because he gives these great speeches after he's lost, and anyone just wandering in, not knowing what the score had been, would think he was totally victorious. He did it in Iowa, placing third, right? Is that where he placed third? Yeah, placed third. And he's continued to do it. It looks like Cruz might be getting squeezed out. And that is interesting and, frankly, gratifying. Although, as I was saying yesterday, Rubio is really no better. In fact, maybe even worse, just because he looks and appears so benign. At least Cruz looked and appeared what he was. Evil incarnate. So, I pretty much thrown in the towel on the Democratic race. I do think Sanders cannot pull it off just based on the on his politics, on his there's just not enough Americans that are going to buy it. They might find it alluring, but they'll be way too scared of it. And also because of the stacked deck in the Democratic Party process, the undemocratic Democratic Party process. What else? I mean, can you even imagine President Trump? I'm only handling this now in seeming somewhat equanimity because I can't not imagine Donald Trump being sworn in as President of the United States. I can't conceive of it. I mean, we all know what an inaugural looks like, so we can picture it, perhaps. But what that would mean. Oh, dear God. If he were to win, and the Republicans hold the Congress, I just think I'd have to tune out. I'd have to tune out or lose my mind for the next 4 years and hope that we haven't been reduced to rubble before the next election. I just can't imagine. But I understand why a lot of Americans, given where they are and how they feel life has gone for them, I can understand them loving him with a sort of fierce, blind love, which is why I don't think the attack ads are going to work. Oh, well. We shall see. Speaking of the Republicans holding the Congress, listen to this quote. He has every right to nominate someone, even if doing so will inevitably plunge our nation into another bitter and avoidable struggle. That's Mitch McConnell, head of the Republican-controlled Senate. Courtesy, by the way, Toomey, Republican senator, is up for re-election. We have got to do our duty in this Commonwealth and put a Democrat in that seat. I don't care who it is. Sestak, McGinty, Fetterman, Donald Duck. Put a Democrat in that seat. That the Senate, the Senate has a job. It is to deliberate. It is to be the sort of grown-up table in the Congress. It is. And to see the head of this august body of honorable men and women say that they will not deign to even meet with any nominee to the Supreme Court that the sitting president puts before them, when that is his responsibility according to the Constitution, which he, when inaugurated, swore to uphold, which they, when they took their oaths of office, swore to uphold. Never did it say in that document that the Senate needn't have any hearings or do anything. They don't have to do what the Constitution says they have to do if the president is in his final year in office. There was no parenthetical thing, no asterisk that the founding fathers put in. And for McConnell, slime bag, to say, oh yes, the president has every right to nominate someone, even if he knows full well that doing so will inevitably plunge the nation into another bitter and avoidable struggle. McConnell. The president would be doing what he, yes, has every right to. The bitter and unavoidable struggle is because of your action, not the president's. How do words like that get out of your mouth without you choking on them? You wonder why people have so little respect for politicians? It's this kind of bullshit double talk. Now, in this case, this is annoying the hell out of me. But don't worry, there's plenty of things that are said that will annoy people of all political persuasions. The way our politics functions and ceases to function has created such anger and contempt and understandable disdain. That's what you're seeing with the Trump voters. And the Trump voters, especially, have been tutored carefully for years to despise government, tutored to disbelieve anything media tell them. So the Republicans have gleefully, for decades, tried to undermine all of the institutions which they now find themselves desperately trying to defend from the pitchfork-wielding hordes that they created. McConnell, of the president, he also has the right to make a different choice. He can let the people decide. Excuse me, can I just stop that right there? McConnell, the people did decide. They decided twice that they wanted this man to be in charge of the executive branch of this government. Yeah? The people did decide, and the terms are clear. He was to be president for another 4 years, not another 3. Unbelievable. So the Senate Republican leadership has said they will not even meet any nominee that the president puts forward. You know, that's not holding a hearing. That's those pictures you see in like Mitch McConnell's office, sitting across from Kagan or Sotomayor. This is what always has happened. In my lifetime, I have seen this happen. presidents send these nominees up. The nominees make the rounds, and they even go into the lion's den of the competitions, the other parties' leadership, and it's all about a certain kind of courtesy that is part of the tradition. But courtesy? As far as I know, and maybe Jared will know this, I do not believe that this level of discourtesy has occurred, at least in modern history. And in fact, the New York Times says it thrusts the Senate into unprecedented territory. So, yeah, I suspect this is a new level of despicable. And I'm sorry, I'm running out of adjectives. So Obama is going, I mean, how would you like to be the woman or the man that the White House approaches and says, hey, you want to be on the Supreme Court? How would you like to be the person who is going to be proffered by the president to this totally intransigent Senate? How would you like to be the person who's got to go up to the Senate and try to knock on the doors like you do and say, hello, how you doing? And they won't even open the door. Well, one thing's for sure, you go down in history because this is historic. So Obama's being told, here's what you do. You find the most impeccable human being possible. And not a firebrand lefty, certainly, or liberal, but a fair-minded, respected jurist. They got to be out there somewhere. One here, one there, a few who have never appeared to be political. You find that person. Vet them up one side and down the other, and you send that person to the Senate and watch how it plays out, because the Republicans will be destroyed if this person is just clearly capable, and there's no reason whatsoever to stand against him. Also, if this person, being a federal judge, has already passed the Senate Judiciary Committee in a former confirmation process and has already enjoyed the support of the very Republicans now who refuse to even meet with him or her. I mean, this ain't gonna help the Republicans. So, fine. I mean, you're looking at a party implode. Brought it on themselves. All right, so that's what I think about all of that. If anybody has any other thoughts, please feel free to throw them in here. Now, I have other things I can talk about, but very little of it has to do with national politics. Do I hear cheers? Do I? I believe so. Oh, but excuse me, we've got to do some emails on political issues. Ansel writes, McConnell wants to stop the nomination before it ever happens. If the president nominates, for example, a Hispanic or a woman, and if the Senate refuses to accommodate that nomination, then the headline from now until November is going to be Senate Republicans, dislike Hispanics or women. No, it wouldn't be dislike. Senate Republicans diss or turn their back on or treat discourteously. Yeah, it ain't going to look good. The optics, as they say. These Republicans are sort of in a state of absolute chaos right now. So Ansel says McConnell needs to stop the nomination before it ever happens. Well, he can't. The process has begun. Well, the process was begun by Scalia dropping dead. And we know what the next step is. The president nominates a successor. Civics 101. So, can't stop it. And McConnell can say, we won't hold hearings, we won't even meet with them. But how does that look to the American people? I'll tell you, it'll fuel, well, actually not, because Trump didn't play this one right. Because Trump has said, delay. He has said, let's not let him. But this is the kind of thing that will just further enrage Americans. I don't know. Angry Americans are a scary lot, actually. Because when you're angry, you don't think straight. Often. You don't think things through, which is what I would suggest is happening with a lot of the Trump voters. But I understand the anger. Totally. Just totally. Mike in Philly writes, if I were Obama and they were telling me that they're going to deny anyone I put up, then I would put up a hardcore right-wing conservative. That's too dangerous, Nick. And then watch them squirm and backpedal. No, that's funny, but no, that's too risky. You got to put up somebody unimpeachable. Somebody so holy, somebody with a halo over there. There got to be somebody like that. And anyway, maybe all of this, will elect a Democrat, Hillary Clinton, and Hillary will nominate, obviously, not a firebrand right-winger. Caller, hello.
Hello, Lynn.
Yes.
Yeah, you know that with this Trump, where do the Republicans think, if, say, Rubio does get ahead of him, where do they think his voters are going to go? They're just going to jump on Rubio? I mean,
no, they're going to go
no
away.
matter how they deal with it.
Right.
You think about it.
Yeah.
And then he might get pissed off and say, hell, I'll run independent. So it's a no-win for them.
Yep.
I mean, this last poll was at 46. I mean, he's got to have a big chunk of voters, and they're not going to say, "Oh yeah, we just love Rubio or Cruz." They're going to say, "Screw it, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to vote."
No, I think that's true because I think a lot of the people he's exciting are people who don't necessarily always vote, and they're excited by him, not by the Republican platform or by somebody the Republican establishment chooses, like Marco Rubio. Right. I agree with you.
Yeah, it's a funny thing how they think, oh, we'll get Rubio in there. I don't think it's going to happen anyway, but if they do, I'm thinking, what about his votes? It's crazy.
I'll tell you, I've never seen anything like it. The flailing around of this establishment, the party establishment, because they've never seen anything like this. There's something wonderful about the fact that they finally, who's that? The chickens have come home to roost.
Yeah,
right?
Trump's a gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I love it. I hope he just stays in there and has them, brings them down. I think they deserve it after 8 years of a terrible W. I mean, I think they deserve what they get. I'm so glad they're getting theirs.
Well, let's
hope it turns out that way. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, what if we're making an assumption that Trump takes the Republican nomination, and then Hillary beats him? I mean, the way things are going, we shouldn't be so sure of anything.
No, that's true too.
Scary as hell.
Okay.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Although somebody did suggest to me, can you imagine a debate between Trump and Hillary? And this, I mean, I'm sorry, but I think she could clean the floor with him. She'll clean the floor with him. I don't know, though. All these things we think we know. And they've proved not to be correct. Chuck writes, I would not want to completely disregard the other 46 primaries. But I think we have to start thinking that this will be a Trump versus Hillary election. Can you imagine those debates? Okay, right. Sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder. In all 4 primaries thus far, more people voted against Trump, that's true, than for Trump. In all 4 primaries, the collective votes of Trump's opponents are the greater total. The question is, how many of the Jeb and Cruz and Rubio and Kasich and Carson voters will change to Trump? I think this is the kind of scenario that third-party candidates pray for. I agree. And we already have a very well-heeled and capable third-party candidate telling us that if Trump is the nominee, he's going to jump in. And that's Bloomberg. And man, that does muddy things. Because who does Bloomberg take votes from? Who does he take votes from? He's too liberal and moderate for the Republican base. He might attract Democrats. Some Democrats. I don't see him hurt. I don't know. I don't see him somehow hurting Trump so much. It seems to me a voter who would vote for Bloomberg would be more inclined to vote for Hillary Clinton than a voter who would vote for Trump. But imagine the spectacle of 2 New York billionaires. Actually, 3 New York billionaires. She's not quite a billionaire yet. Give her a chance. Imagine. Ooh, God. And speaking of billionaires, I found this, and I don't know. This is, you'll wonder why. The people are up to here with the inequality and with the rich taking so much more than their share and owning our government and screwing us left and right. Here's just another, every day the paper's full of something. And here's one. And this is just somewhere near San Francisco. It actually has to do with a piece of land on San Francisco Bay. A nice piece of land on San Francisco Bay. Well, a gazillionaire, zillionaire, took a hankering to that hunk of land. Let me see how the acreage. It's like 53 acres right on the bay, right on essentially the ocean. And he bought it. He said, I'm buying that. I want that. And he bought it for $37.5 million. Okay.
Direct quote.
What?
Is that a direct quote?
No.
I'm buying that.
No, that's not a direct quote. Silly wanted to know, did he really say, I'm buying that? No, he did not. I don't know what he said. Maybe he did. He wanted it, so he got it. He took it, $37.5 million. And he doesn't live there. He hadn't built a house there. He just wanted it. That's mine. Mine. It's like Monopoly, isn't it? It's like fucking Monopoly. This is it. This is the game they play. And here's the thing. This piece of real estate has on it something called Martin's Beach. And for over a century, Martin's Beach has been a haven for regular people wanting to go to the beach. The little people sitting on the sand and looking at the ocean. What did this billionaire do upon getting his latest little prize? He, of course, closed it to the public. And, people squawked, screamed, but it's now his land, not public anymore. And guess what he's doing now? He's offering to sell it to the state of California. Oh, you want this as a public? Go ahead. I'll let you buy it from me. It was public before he bought it, apparently. Nobody had kept the public off. He buys it, then says, and closes it, and then says, this son of a bitch, you want to know his name? Not that you've ever heard it before. There's so many of these guys. He's one of the founders of Sun Microsystems. His name is Vinod Khosla. The latest SOB we know about. There's so many of them you can't even. I mean, these people, you hear about the 1%, and this is maybe the 0.5% of that, upper 0.5% of that. Despicable. Okay, let's see. NP has this to say, I think Obama should appoint himself. He can't. I believe he can't. If somebody knows otherwise, let me know. But I don't think he can. And how would that nomination, how would those hearings go? So did you hear about the 1-year-old who was convicted in Egypt of killing 3 people, carrying guns and fire bombs, blocking a road, and trying to damage government buildings? You hear about that guy? 1-year-old? He was sentenced to life in prison. Now, the amazing thing, man, what a fine justice system they must have in Egypt, as we know. So what Egypt likes to do is they haul in like 100 people they want to kill, and they try them all together. And this little kid was he never showed in the court because, after all, it was his nap time. I don't know. They convicted him. The verdict came down last week in a mass trial of over 100 people suspected of being members of the Muslim Brotherhood. Okay. The boy's father goes tearfully on television and says, I swear I don't want to upset anyone. Can you imagine the terror? I swear I don't want to upset anyone, but they told me they will take my child. They told me they will take my child. Well, actually, the father, if I'm reading this right, this is so convoluted. If I'm reading this right, the father had already spent 4 months in prison himself because initially the authorities mistook him for his son, the 1-year-old, who really did the deed. It has to do with names and how they don't. Oh, and now they're saying, oh yeah, well maybe this isn't the right guy. By the way, the boy now is almost 3. So maybe he can defend himself. I don't know. Now the military is saying, maybe this is not right. And they said, maybe we meant to try a 16-year-old student with that same name. Now, that 16-year-old is on the run. He is, God help him. But that, too, may be a mistake because another military spokesman said that the wanted culprit was actually the 1-year-old's uncle. Not the father, who'd already done 4 months in prison. What the? And when you see it, I mean, our justice system is absurd in many ways. But, man, you'd have to really work to get more absurd than convicting a toddler. I mean, the kid had a pretty good alibi, don't you think? I mean, excuse me, Your Honor. I was pooping in my pants and sucking on my pacifier at the time of the incident. I mean, what the hell? I mean, what kind of a justice system is this that we wouldn't even have an opportunity to say, excuse me? All right, so anyway. And get this, lest you think that now, I see in this country, what would happen with something like this? Well, it would just be, we would be regaled by all kinds of ridicule of the justice system, right? And the idiots who did all this stuff. But guess what? In Egypt, it is a crime to insult the justice system. And they'll get you. And it doesn't matter if you're 1-year-old. They'll get you. So people in Egypt just have to sit and just... That's why even the father, the kid said, I don't want to upset anyone. Yeah, because he's worrying, oh my God, they'll imprison me again thinking I'm my 1-year-old. God, I don't know. Many, 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 many people have been imprisoned in Egypt for insulting the judiciary. God. We worry, some of us, about the United States becoming a laughingstock to the rest of the world. Well, there's a lot of, sometimes you got to keep things in perspective because, as bad as we've gotten and fallen, we ain't Egypt yet. All right, you guys keep writing me. I'll keep reading it. Henry Lynn, before Scalia passed, electing a Democratic president was the one and only way of keeping a Republican. Electing a Democrat was the one and only way of keeping a Republican House, Republican Senate, and conservative Supreme Court in check. Now that Scalia is gone, a Democratic win not only gets the White House as a prize, but also wins the Supreme Court. Yeah, probably. It starts tipping everything back. The stakes are much higher now. I agree with you. If anyone was on the fence now with the court in play, assuming that the Republicans manage to do what they're saying they'll do and not sign off on the president's nomination to the court, then that means Hillary will make the appointment. And this is why you gotta knock Toomey out. And we gotta knock some of these Republicans out. There's a lot of Republicans up. 6 or 7, I think. Knock out 2 or 3 of them, and we got the Senate back. So we could have the Senate, the White House, and a friendlier Supreme Court. Much bigger stakes. You're absolutely correct. We have got to get everybody we know to vote Democrat in November, and it's as simple as that. Somebody's telling me to wait for the election? What do you mean? Because President Obama, excuse me, I'm fine. I'm fine. Cliff writes, because President Obama has only 11 months left in his term, Republicans say that a new justice of the Supreme Court should not be confirmed or even nominated until the people have spoken in the next election. Well, following the same logic, none of the 34 senators, including Toomey, and 435 representatives whose terms end even before Obama's, should be permitted to pass or even propose any legislation until after the next election. Cliff! Kudos! That's a great point. All those people in the House of Representatives, they are running for re-election. Why should they be allowed to do anything? Because, they might not even be there. How dare they be able to set laws in place and have any power whatsoever when they could be back out on amongst the rabble in just 10 months. Cliff goes on, and because Obamacare could be repealed, you might want to wait until after the next election to see a doctor about that pain in your chest. Oh, all right. One more. Denise writes, Lynn, just another thing to add to this bizarre election. Ivanka Trump, that was his first wife, right? Ivanka Trump said in a Vogue interview that she and her husband frequently socialize with Chelsea Clinton and her husband. Yeah, I believe, that must be getting awkward. Well, yeah. Well, wait, Ivanka's out of the picture. She said I don't know. Denise, that's not quite right, because Ivanka and Donald aren't together now. I believe, Ivanka is the daughter? It's the daughter. That's true. I don't know if this Ivanka is, I don't follow the Trump family. I'm sorry. The Trump's daughter and her husband are friendly with Chelsea's husband and her. They're both young, rich, power couples, right? And I think Trump's daughter is married to a Jewish guy, as Chelsea is, that these are two Jewish husbands who tend to be more liberal. I don't know. Okay. That would be getting a little sticky, I suppose, at some point. God. Okay. Here's something else that's not political. I love this. This takes us to Brazil. Brazil. Odd country in many ways, but then what country isn't? Are you looking at a picture of who? I've
never seen Chelsea Clinton's husband.
Oh, Chelsea Clinton's husband? Yeah.
He's cute.
Looks like a nice Jewish boy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta love a nice Jewish boy.
Mezvinsky?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so there's a law. Get this. There is a law in Brazil that if you're waiting in line at the bank, at the grocery store, at the drugstore to get a prescription, you name it, any line, at the doctor's office, if you're waiting in line and you are 60 years old or older, you can elbow your way through and go straight to the front of the line. Doesn't matter what kind of line it is. There is a law. 60. Brazil requires all private businesses and government facilities to provide immediate attention to people age 60 and over. Yes, yes, yes. 60? What? They think 60s are elderly? I mean, come on. And if they don't do it, the businesses, they can be fined up to $750 for each infraction. So here's what's happening in Brazil. These old farts, I mean, people in their 70s and 80s, they're like, excuse me, at the ATM machine, get out of the way, I get to, and people, can you imagine? I don't even care with the law. Can you imagine the chutzpah that's required to make use of that? I would never do that. Even if it's a law, I would never do that. And talk about creating intergenerational strife. Or talk about looking forward to getting old. God. So in this is from the Wall Street Journal, and in this one guy is talking about it and how it just makes people crazy. He says, what bugs me is able-bodied seniors just cutting in front, especially those guys with dyed hair and a pocket full of Viagra. And then he said his own mother. He said, my own mother has turned into a megalomaniac because of this. If there's just one person ahead of her, she elbows him out of the way. His mother, meanwhile, 81 years old, says, he's exaggerating. Isn't that bizarre? I mean, I can see, like TSA does, 75 and older, maybe. But even that, why would it have to do with age? As I said, I didn't say, as I'm about to say, I mean, I know people in their 80s and 90s who are perfectly capable of standing in line with everybody else. And there might be, I mean, why wouldn't the law, what a stupid law, ageist. What a stupid law. Why wouldn't it say, I mean, pregnant women, 9 months old, people with diarrhea. I mean, you could come up with a whole list of people with irritable bowel syndrome, people who cannot wait in line. That would make some sense. Disabled people who have sore feet, bad backs, I don't know. But just based on age and making the cutoff 60? Jeez. Odd. I came upon this quote, and I loved it. I read it to my son, and he just looked at me with his stony face, and I thought, well, maybe it's not as good as I thought it was. I don't know. But I got it right away, totally. Here's what it is. It's a quote by Sid Caesar of blessed memory. For those of you too young, Sid Caesar, one of the most brilliant comedians ever. Sid Caesar said this: the trouble with telling a good story is that it invariably reminds the other guy of a dull one. Isn't that true? Uh-huh. Yeah. So you get done, it must have happened to him all the time because he was such a great, so he would tell a remarkably funny, engaging story, and then some person there in the group would say, oh yeah, that reminds me of the time. Ain't that the truth? Okay, and here's one more. This comes from The Week, the magazine The Week, but I like this one too. And this is by children's author Judith Viorst. I don't know how it's pronounced. I know the name, but haven't heard it spoken. Okay, this is her definition of strength. Strength is the capacity to break a chocolate bar into 4 pieces with your bare hands and then eat just one. That's pretty good. I would not be strong in that situation. I know I would not. Okay. And this is sort of a belated obit I got for you. Her name is Mildred Moss. Mildred Moss. She died, I believe, earlier this month. I did not see an obituary, but I later found an article in a sports section of the New York Times. She was not an athlete. She was actually, she was many things. She was a member of the faculty at Grambling University. And she also had been a professor at other schools. I'm not seeing them all here. But she did teach. And they had this in colleges at the time. I guess home economics. I mean, she died, she was in her 90s. So back in the day, they still taught home economics, I guess, for the girls that were going to college. It says, okay, so here's more of her history. She left the Jim Crow South after beginning work on a doctorate at Michigan State. Then in the early 60s, the Grambling said, hey, we'd really like you to be in our new home economics department. In the early 60s, there's still a major in home economics for the girls. And she thought, okay. So she went to Grambling. Now, Grambling, as you know, is one of the most celebrated historically black colleges. When other colleges wouldn't allow black people to be students, black people just said, okay, well, then we'll make our own universities. That's always what happens. So how does the home economics professor get into the sports page? Well, again, we're talking about 60s black racial politics. And what happened was the coach of the football team, a famous man in his own right, Eddie Robinson, Grambling State's coach, comes to her and says, look, Mildred, you know, my guys, most of them have never been anywhere out of the South. They've never been to a fancy hotel. They've never been in a lot of these situations. And we go on the road. They're going to be flying on airplanes. People are going to be watching them. And I want to ensure that they will comport themselves with the same kind of precision at a dining room table that they would on the field. And Mildred said, Coach, I'm on it. And so for years and years and years, this woman would coach the basketball players, the football players, on how to cut meat one piece at a time, how to set a proper table, what spoons, what forks are used for what, how to drink soup, how to walk on a certain side where the traffic is if walking with a girlfriend. And her final exam for them always consisted of a formal dinner in which they had. And One of the guys who she got her hands on was Willis Reed, and you basketball fans will remember Willis Reed. He was a great with the New York Knicks. Willis Reed was a freshman at Grambling State, and he had grown up in a little black city called Bernice in northern Louisiana. Bernice was known for lynching more people per capita than anywhere else. And he'd never, as a freshman, been anywhere. But he was told, and his basketball teammates were told one day in 1961 that the coach said, I've scheduled a practice session for you, but it's a little unusual. You're going over to the home economics department. And so she coached Willis Reed and all of the others. Now, here's what one of the coaches said. This is the basketball coach. They're taking planes to L.A., Detroit, Chicago, and New York, and they're staying in fancy hotels with fancy restaurants. And there are a lot of white people staring at their every move and waiting for, expecting, in fact, them to do something that they can say, oh, well, they're black, to prove that they were out of place and that black people were uncivilized. And so that's why they did this, because when the black teams from Grambling would be in public, they were the most fastidious in every manner of all. None of the white kids. White kids didn't have to do this. Now, in our current politics, I mean black politics, this would be looked at probably as, well, I think it was called the politics of respectability. And this is an idea that doesn't go over well in 2016 with African Americans. Then in order that they had to somehow show that they were whiter than the whites, that they knew, a soup spoon from a I don't even know what the other spoons are called. Willis Reed would. So this article does ask, so are black efforts at self-improvement and self-criticism merely ways of submitting to white standards, or are they methods of emancipation of defying the low expectations of the bigots? Now, Mildred Moss, of blessed memory, was certainly someone who thought this is the way you do this to the bigots. And Coach Robinson said, the civil rights movement was helping to change laws. Our goal was to help change attitudes. So just wanted to point out, Mildred Moss, very few people ever heard of her, but she's been called a civil rights warrior armed with spoons and thank you notes. Back to your Nancy writes, don't be so sure Hillary will win. Oh, don't be so sure Hillary will win? Or the subject line is don't be so sure, and then the email is Hillary will win. I think she means Hillary will win. I don't know. Oh, my. Mike from Philly writes, he's a teacher. I was teaching my kids the other day about paparazzi, and they were interested in how it works. I told them they try to get famous people in compromising positions. Maybe not having clothes on, or maybe it's him drunk or high or angry or yelling or looking lousy. Papers and websites pay the most for this kind of thing. Then I said, remember when Mel Gibson went crazy and yelled at the photographer, and that photographer got millions? Kids raised their hand, and they were all shouting the same thing. Who's Mel Gibson? Yep. Other kids shouted out, one of the Spice Girls. What? Oh, Mel. One of the Spice Girls is named Mel. But one of the kids thought it was Mel Gibson was one of the Spice Girls? That's funny. I immediately couldn't speak from holding back my laughter. I thought, yep, anti-Semite spice. Funny, once the biggest movie star on the planet is now not known and mistaken for a Spice Girl. And Dorothea, you're going to get the final word in because we're out of time. Current polls for Pennsylvania show that in November, in an election with Trump and Clinton, Pennsylvania is polling only slightly for Clinton. If it were held today, Clinton would win, but it would be close. Also, Democrats are projected to gain 2 seats in the Senate. I don't see how anyone makes projections anymore in this climate, but okay. But Toomey is not one of them. We're not supposed to knock off Toomey? Bullshit. Watch us. However, current polls show that he has a weak hold on PA, so he is beatable. Do we know who his opponent? Yeah, we know his opponents are. Well, it's McGinty is the Democratic Party establishment choice. She ran for governor last time around and was trounced by Wolf, as everybody was. And then there's John Fetterman, the mayor of Braddock, who's thrown his, he doesn't wear a hat, in. And then there's Admiral Joe Sestak, who was a congressman, who almost beat Toomey last time around, just lost by a sliver. But the party establishment hates him, too. So there you have it. All right, you guys, thanks very much. Tomorrow, the wisdom of former CMU professor of history Jared Day. Okay, we'll be talking politics tomorrow, but in relation to presidential political history. Okay, see you then.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.